Heyo, duckies and dice fiends. Welcome back. It is the Table Talk Show. I am Kay. I am here with my co-host, my usual co-host, David, and a very special guest today. But before we get into that, David, who the heck is you and what the heck is we doing here? David is processing.
I'm David, and this is the Chaotic Wholesome Presents. David forgot to mute the tab that the thing is on, and so he was getting crosstalk, and is still getting crosstalk table talk show, where every week we talk about TTRPG stuff, usually without crosstalk, all with a focus on, or no, you see. I'm gonna mute this tab now so that I don't.
Yes, you should, because I can see it
Just
Yes,
scramble in your
please.
just
brain.
breaking.
Please.
Hi, talk show. We do the talk show on Tuesdays. Usually, where every week we talk about TTRPG stuff, how to be a better player, how to be a better GM, how to be a better person, all with a focus on intersectionality and inclusivity so that everybody can have a good time.
And David, I'm sending you a new link because your captions are not showing up.
Boo!
I know. I know.
How dare
Ooh.
I
they?
know.
How
It's so rude.
dare they?
Yes. So,
That's
like David
weird
said,
because it's still connected.
yeah. I mean, I see you in here. I'm gonna kick you out. I've kicked you now.
Uh,
I have that power.
You've got
I
the
can control
power.
David in very few ways, but that is one.
That is the one.
That is the one.
Kicking him out.
It's the only thing I've got. So yes, every Tuesday we come here and we do this, and often we are lucky enough to have special guests. Normally on
Word.
Thursdays, you can find us still here playing Baldur's Gate 3, our first playthrough, complete playthrough streamed online, co-op. However, not this Tuesday, because I'm going to be over at the Nerdsmith channel playing the Grand Labyrinth Heist. It is the penultimate episode. It's fine. My character only got smooched last time, and in a Victorian setting, that's a big deal. I know.
Ooh, scandalous.
Friday we will be playing Baldur's Gate right here. That is all we can really talk about right now. Other things are in the works,
but very soon more to come.
Keep an eye out on our socials, on our Discord, because we are about to announce our Pride and Juneteenth charity games. And y'all, I cannot believe some of the people that we're going to have playing games here. So please, thank you for being awesome. Hang out. We can't wait to share stories with you. But enough about us. We are here today because of this incredible human being. I think you're on this side. I think you're over here on this. I'm waiting for stream to catch up. And
Wait
this
for
is
stream to
always
catch up to
the
see. I
awkward
think
part,
you might be right. No. Oh
no,
no.
I was right the first time.
You were right the first time.
Right
Yes.
over here. We have Kindo, the incredible Kendrick, who is here to tell us about Tales Yet Told. We've been so fortunate to have several podcasters on recently, and we are keeping the streak alive. Kendo, tell us who the heck is you, and what the heck does you do?
Yeah, hello. Hi, my name is Kendrick or Kendo, whichever you prefer. I use they, he pronouns. And I am the creator, producer, and most of the time, the GM for Tales Yet Told, an actual play podcast dedicated to telling weird and fun stories full of imagination, thoughtful characterization, uh, and inclusivity. It is it is a lot of things. It was a very small passion project that 3 years later is now an award-winning production, both for its podcast portion and its streaming portion, that my friends have somehow allowed me to convince them to be a part of. It is so many things.
Goodness.
Gosh.
I'm
Yeah.
going to interrupt you 1 second. The
No, please,
transmissions,
Joe.
thank you so much for the raid. Welcome on in, raiders. We've just started the talk show. I am Kay. This is David. This is Kendo. We're here today talking about Tales Yet Told, which is Kendo's award-winning queer-led podcast. And we are so excited to learn more. Dragon Age. Oh, excellent.
Ooh,
But
nice.
yes, thank you all for coming in. We hope you enjoy the chat. If you need to rate and run the transmissions, totally understand. Thank you so much for bringing your community by. So yes, passion project that spun out of control and won awards. I mean, that's one of the better spin outs you can have.
Yeah, no, honestly, like of all of the things that could have happened, it turning out good and people liking it is the better option of the many that could have happened. But yeah, it started. I had just moved to Texas like in 20. Gosh, when was that? 2021. At like on the during the pandemic, and I had gotten a job that finally afforded me enough money and gave me enough free time where I was like, oh, I can finally do something like an art project again. for myself, and I was getting really into indie TTRPGs at the time, and I it was around no, it was early summer. It was early summer, but for some reason I was thinking about Over the Garden Wall. I truly don't remember what the inciting incident for this
Hey,
was.
DC.
But I had the idea of like, oh, what if I did like an Over the Garden Wall inspired campaign? And I think it was because I might have been looking for a tabletop game at the time that was in that area.
Yeah. Looking for those
And
vibes.
yeah, exactly. And I found Babes in the Wood, the first edition of Babes in the Wood by Adam Foss, which I genuinely don't know if you can find anywhere anymore, because the second edition is out and he obviously cares a lot more about that in comparison to the first edition of this game, which I think from a conversation I had with him was like the first TTRPG he had ever designed. And so I had found that and I asked some of my friends who were like, hey, I enjoyed playing with you and all of these other games. Would this be a thing that, would you want to do this? And they said yes. And that became Strangers in the Wood, which was our first season for Tales Yet Told, which has means so much to me and means a lot to a lot of the people who have watched it as well. It is a mixture of Over the Garden Wall and The Matrix and Driver and Carrie. It is a hodgepodge
A few
of
things.
80s action and horror, supernatural horror, cybernetic horror, body horror, and we put 3 kids in that. And said, hey, what would happen? And we got something incredibly beautiful and affecting and horrible and tragic in so many ways.
You
That, yeah.
You definitely have some of your people here. We got Mimics and Misfits says Over the Garden Wall is truly a treasure, and that's a rock fact.
That is a rock fact.
Kate Orange Sky says, oh my god, that's amazing. My home duet campaign is based on Over the Garden Wall.
Ooh.
Potatoes and molasses runs free in my head.
That song is a
DC.
bop.
It is. Yeah, no, it's we ended up the kind of concept for Strangers in the Wood is that these two foster children, Dakota Wallace and Dorothy Reed, who are foster siblings, staying at the same home, go out for a walk for bad reasons on Halloween night, and they find themselves in this strange autumnal world known as the Sublime, and they very quickly meet who will be a long time companion, Walter, the talking weasel, in the middle of a diner in the middle of a forest during a storm, and they kind of get whisked on this adventure that takes like almost every possible way things can go bad. Things do get bad, and then continually worse as you watch the characters get pulled apart, but like the world constantly trying to impose a structure that's not like that far from 80s American culture, if it weren't so idealized, and like obviously exaggerated to a degree where if you don't follow the rules of the world, it will turn you into an animal in the worst possible way that it could exist. I'm sorry, my cat just woke up from her nap.
We have a cat counter on screen, and David and I both hit it at the same time. We're like, there's a cat!
That's so funny. That's so good.
Kate says she's got a Walter, or they've got a Walter in their game, and his brother is Gregory.
Oh, I love that. That's great. That's really good. Yeah, and it's like as the world as they're traveling through this world, learning about like the very rigid structure and like the dark presence that like rules it, they it doesn't the world is constantly trying to pull them apart from each other and constantly being like, hey, you need to fit inside this structure, which obviously doesn't vibe with like any of the way it's like, hey, now you have to go to the school that you don't have to go to. You're going to be given a job that you do for the rest of your life. Don't worry, it's fine. If you don't want to do it, we'll just turn you into something against your will. And the thing that it turns you into is not like a poof magic snap of the fingers, you're an animal. It's a long,
Mm-hmm.
horrifying like process of bodily transformation, and psychological transformation as it tries to bend your will towards closer to the animal that you're turning into, and like the ways in which we explore like the trauma and the effects of that happening to people, and like
Mm-hmm.
the trauma of being forced into the system against your will, and like how that changes your relationships with the people around you and the way that it changes your relationship with yourself,
Mm-hmm.
um was like not at all what we were expecting would happen when I was like, hey, do you want to play this over the garden wall game for this podcast? But it's like, I don't know, it's something, it became incredibly cool and very close to my
Mm-hmm.
heart.
It's
Yeah.
interesting that those are the themes you hit on. We were discussing in the green room before stream, like Kendo likes horror. We like horror a lot. Kendo likes
Mhm.
TTRPGs. Surprise! I know this is shocking. We like TTRPGs. David and I wrote an original 5e module that we've run twice on stream now,
Mhm.
which involves it sounds like this is going to be the big twist at the end. It's not. They tell you at first, first NPC is like, this is what this is. Like,
Mhm.
everyone in this game is, the entire world they're in is set inside the dream of a god. And it's because like one of the things that's revealed is like this god didn't fit with the other gods and was like, well, then I don't want to conform to what all these other gods are doing. And
Mhm.
little bit of a spoiler, not a huge spoiler, little bit of, it's a child god. It's this, all the other gods are adults, child god comes into being, and the adults are like, you get this, and the kid's like, I'm gonna go dream. I'm gonna go do what I want. So it's interesting that transformation and not
Yeah.
fitting in and children, like we came at it the same way.
Yeah.
Different outputs, but yeah, same ideas.
Yeah, because I think that's a lot of, because I think I don't know why I'm drawn a lot to doing narratives with like teenagers, young adults,
Mhm.
of like, because there's something when I usually tell stories, I guess like the kind of like niche that I tend to find myself in is talking a lot about like structures and the way that that impacts like the way the all of that like relationship stuff with other people and yourself and like
Mhm.
the world around you. And there's something about that age of like mid late teens, early 20s that is very formative in that way of like a lot of what happens during that period of time sets the trajectory for everything else that will come later, without like serious like introspection and like the changing of a self, right?
And
um
it is such a time of self-discovery, but also discovering the world, figuring out what is
yes.
fair and what is not, figuring
Hmm.
out what options do I have versus what are the options they're telling me I have, because that's often not. And look, I know I'm biased because I am of an age, but those 80s coming of age movies,
Yep.
just from the Labyrinth to the Breakfast Club, like, mwah.
That feeling you have is 100% what my my thoughts, and like when I was building the world of the Sublime, going into it is examining that kind of nostalgia,
Mhm.
specifically to, there's this word, uh anemoia, I think it's anemoia. It's the feeling of nostalgia for a time period you didn't live in, and
It's
they're
Irish,
like,
right? It's an
I
Irish thing.
I don't know. It might
If it's
be.
not, there is also an Irish word for a longing for home, even if it's a place you've never been. And
Oh.
David and I are building a thing around that.
Oh, that's so cool. And like that, and like 100, and like the way in which 80s nostalgia has been pushed onto generations that did not live in the 80s. Like we still get 80, like Stranger Things still exists. Like we still get things set in this time period that pushes like, oh man, the 80s, like this when things were good, when like everything was like fine. You could go with your friends down to the arcade and like, yeah, you'd get in a scrape with some bullies, but like life was good. You could just be out there and
Falcor the
there's all
dragon
this.
might show up.
Exactly. Like life is fine. And it's like if you looked at a history book, the 80s sucked for
Right.
most people.
Looking back at that time, it's like, how did anyone have children in that time? Like that time was category. David knows this about me, and I know you've got a thing to say, David. I will let you. But David knows this about me. I grew up in the 80s, y'all. I've obviously dated myself earlier. I grew up in the 80s, so I grew up with the 50s nostalgia, right? All the adults around me are like, remember the 50s and how great it was, to the point. Someone is very angrily honking outside, and I'm pretty sure my mic picked it up.
I haven't heard it.
Okay,
I
good.
didn't hear it either.
There's very aggressive honking going on. And it's not a goose. I grew up way out in the sticks. For those of you who don't know, I said this in the green room. I grew up closer to a big cat rescue than I did a grocery store. Like, no one was around. And yes, the 80s, there is so much more wood paneling in the 80s than is ever represented in media.
Oh, man.
So much wood paneling, right?
I'm going to keep that in mind.
More wood paneling and the TVs are heavier than you thought.
Yes. But I grew up with that 50s nostalgia to the point where I didn't know ice cream trucks were real until I was in my mid-20s. I thought that was just a piece of 50s nostalgia that wasn't actually real or out there anywhere. And I was an adult in an apartment when an ice cream truck pulled up. I'm like, what? These are real. What? I thought that was...
I'm imagining the magic of realizing that there is such a thing as an ice cream truck.
Like, I kind of knew they existed, but I figured they only like showed up like around like stadiums, you know?
Yeah,
like the idea
it was
of an
like a
ice cream
food
truck actually
kind of
driving
deal.
through your neighborhood was completely devoid to me.
And I may or may not have, having heard this fact about Kay, sent Kay a picture of every ice cream truck in my vicinity ever since.
Especially the TikToks of the ice cream truck with the remix song.
Oh yeah. So for those of you not in a know, there's at least one ice cream truck in Atlanta that has like a club remix, it's a trap
beat.
It's a trap remix of the like stereotypical ice cream song. And so when they're cruising through neighborhoods, you know, black people gonna be black people, so they start grooving to it. And so there are all these videos of just random people on the street dancing. And to be fair, you can't listen to it and not groove a little bit.
It's catchy AF.
And every single I send to Kay religiously.
Every single one.
So good. So good.
You could kill an ogre with the Trinitron. Yes.
Yeah. Oh man. Ooh.
When we had a huge, and I'm talking huge tube TV when I was a kid. Like that, we had one TV growing up. It was this huge tube. It was in like a built-in entertainment center, like on top of a little entertainment stand. We sold that house and that TV stayed. We're like,
because who's going to move it?
We're like, this is the new owner's problem. Here's the thing. If you need to get rid of a tube TV, call the Smash community. This TV was so big and we were so far out in the middle of nowhere that the Smash community would not come and pick it up. We're like, it's free. It's yours.
It's a
They're like,
free TV. No,
well, it's a free tube TV because for those of you who don't know, because I work in video games, so I've dealt with a lot of Smash tournament players. The old school Smash doesn't play as well on modern TVs. They want it on the tube TV. So the Smash community is always hunting for the great big TVs.
Is it a frame rate thing?
Yeah.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
Didn't Raz write a new ice cream truck song? You know, we need a new ice cream truck song. If you have not looked up the lyrics.
Did you say Raz? That is so delightful.
My
that is the best thing that has
dyslexia.
happened
I'm
to me all
sorry.
week.
My dyslexia saw R-A-Z.
Yeah,
And it
that's
wasn't
fair.
until everyone was laughing that I looked and went, nope, that's RZA.
That's RZA. Raz. That's so funny.
My
I will
dyslexia
find that
doesn't
man
pop
one
up very
day,
often.
and I'll be
but-
like, "Hey there, Raz," and
How's
I
it
will
going, Raz?
collapse laughing, and he won't know why, and then I'll have a
Yep.
story to tell for the rest of my life. Now on the
There you
bucket
go.
list, go find RZA.
Raz.
Yep, yep. But so like in my prose, less in the like TTRPG stuff I write. A very long time ago, somebody gave me a piece of writing advice, or I read it somewhere, that that the events that you're writing about should be the most important thing that happens in a character's life.
Mhm.
And that's why, and in thinking about, like, especially like you see in like a lot of anime and a lot of fantasy, like hero's journey, you get a lot of like 14, 15, 16.
Yeah.
And even something like Avatar: The Last Airbender, like, you know, you have this 100-year-old 13-year-old.
Mhm.
Just like
And
Ash Ketchum.
right. Ass Ketchum, 13 years old, 20 years work experience.
Literally.
And there's something to be said about, there's this intersection of all these things that happen at that time, including but not limited to, you you find your place in society in addition to finding yourself, but you also decide what direction you're going to go from there. You decide what sort of person you're going to be by the end of that learning experience.
Yeah.
And you get that in Over the Garden Wall as well. Like, I forget what the older kid's name.
Wort.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Wort.
Not Wart. Wart.
Not Wort.
And so you, like, he comes out of it with his little brother, and he's a very different person than when he went in. And part of that is decisions that he made along the way, including like the big decision of like, no, like my little brother may be annoying, but one, he's right 90% of the time. And two, maybe I should not be a dickbag to my brother and instead be a good older brother to him. And, you know, if you go and find him 20 years later, that will have an indelible shape to who he is as a person. So it's always really interesting to tell stories with characters that are right in that pocket of not just time but experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, and there's, despite, so we did not plan this, but in looking back and like looking and like having, I recently did a rewatch of Strangers in the Wood because we're working on our season 2. Um, um, but we actually hit a lot of similar beats that Over the Garden Wall does, as far as like broad strokes of like where characters are at in their life and like the kinds of things that they're like kind of going through. And it's like not like we like sat down and like was like, all right, so Over the Garden Wall does this and this, so we've got to do this and this. But I think it goes to like our understanding of that story and the story that we wanted to tell, that we end up going similar places, not the same at all, in ways that are like, so as I mentioned before, there are like the two of the characters are foster siblings, right? And there is like an older sibling and a younger sibling kind of dynamic
Mhm.
that does like at the start mirror that like oh okay, like this is like smart ass kind of kid who like thinks they're a little
Mhm.
better and like who likes like being like kind of rude to their like younger sibling who does have like this kind of joy for the world kind of thing. But as it goes on, that and the world starts pulling on them, that kind of relationship goes so many places,
Mhm.
and ends up going very like spoilers for Strangers in the Wood, goes very bad, actually. They are like what you were saying, fundamentally different people based
Mhm.
on everything that they experienced throughout that first season. And we end that first season kind of like like ironically enough, I title all of the episodes for that season based off of a quote that someone says, and the quote for that one is "Are we good?" And it is both a like, "Are we good with each other after everything that's happened?" But also there are decisions that people make and
Yeah.
things
Are
that
we the
people
bad
do
guys?
that fundamentally change like how they view themselves.
Mhm.
And like of course they're still going through, and the hope is that hey, hopefully they come back together and like they can go through. It's like, hey, I've changed but I still love you. But like it's so interesting seeing
Mhm.
how them being in this very vulnerable position at a very vulnerable point in their life where Dakota is learning many things about their gender and sexuality and coming terms with it and being okay with that being a very public thing, and
Mhm.
like how that comes into conflict with um Dorothy's viewing Dakota as her older sister, as kind of a replacement for an older sister that she has lost due to the way that the foster care system works. Um, and like that, like coming into like a hey, this person that I've built up into my head isn't exactly how I viewed them. They're different, and that's okay. But it does. There is still not a grieving process, but
Mhm.
there is a period of time in which I have to acclimate to what reality actually is
Yeah.
versus what I thought it was. Also, I'm 9. Um,
Right.
exactly. It's like a lot of these things that are pushed onto this kind of forced growing that is pushed onto these kids because the world will not wait for you
Yeah.
to be ready to have to go through these experiences. And that's
Mhm.
something that I think we really explored a lot in
Yeah.
Strangers in the Wood, of like figuring out who you are and who you have to be when you were not ready to actually have
Yeah.
those conversations or that kind of thought process.
One thing I find really like one thing you mentioned is like we didn't plan to like steal all these plot points from Over the Garden Wall, but when you tell this type of story, this coming of age story where you wander into another world, there are
Hmm.
plot points that you stumble into headfirst.
Mhm.
And there are many, many examples of that, whether it is Alice in Wonderland or The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, or The Wizard of Oz, or all these stories where it's like you wake up in another world and then you meet all these interesting, zany characters, and they look at the person and they go, no, 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 we're not the interesting, zany ones. This is
You.
normal for us.
Yeah.
You are the weirdo here.
Yeah.
Hmm.
um
Hmm.
Well,
and how much those characters then sort of like take them out of their centric view and make them go, okay, now you have to like learn to be the other instead of being the status quo. um and it's yeah, and it's really interesting how like point for point, whether it's Over the Garden Wall or any of the other like historical versions of it, it's like there it doesn't matter um how you approach it, you're going to walk into these same things because it's what you would experience. Like, you
Yeah.
get out of bed and like your feet touch the ground, all of us experience that, regardless of culture.
Yeah. And I think like going to your point on that, like we I think our intent going into Strangers in the Wood was to look at that kind of like the finding yourself in another world, finding yourself in a place, and like looking at that and in some ways flipping it on its head, right? Because the world that they're moving into isn't much more like progressive and like oh you can just kind of be whoever you want and do whatever you want. It's the opposite, where the world is saying you have to be exactly this and exactly that, and it does still put them in a question like, okay, am I the weirdo for not wanting to conform to
Mhm.
what society is telling me, and then coming out on the other side and be like, no, actually I was right. Like
Yeah.
you're actually the one who's wrong, and you can still have the similar parallel beats, but just kind of in the other
Yeah.
direction.
So, first off, have you seen and or read The Little Prince?
I haven't
So
actually.
Little Prince, I think this will also inspire a lot in you. It is an excellent book. There is also a beautiful retelling of it on Netflix. The original story is about the Little Prince.
Mhm,
The Netflix telling is the character from the book who meets a little girl. And it deals with a lot of that, like what you are expected to be type thing. Like I watched
mhm,
it and finished it and was crying, and I'm like, this is gonna save someone's life because it's
mhm,
all about being allowed to be an artist. It's about an Asian girl who likes art and wants to be a kid, but has all of this over structured and
mhm,
like her kind of finding freedom. It's very, very good.
mhm.
So first off, I think that
I
might help
will
you with
100,
season two.
yeah,
It's really good.
absolutely.
But I mean, the book is like this thick, like it's the
Yeah,
tiniest little book,
it's
but it's
yeah.
really good. Um,
Okay.
but number two, David and I spend, and chat, I am talking at you. I saw the old animated series and like, okay, I have not seen the 1980s one, but I have been told it is excellent. Um, David and I'm looking at you, chat. We spend a lot of time, we talk about, the Matt Mercer effect and how it's like, don't try to be Matt Mercer. Go tell your story. I I have stolen so much of my GM style from Brennan Lee Mulligan, but I'm not trying to be Brennan Lee Mulligan, right? Don't go, I can't be blank, or the only story I have to tell has already been told. Every story has been told. And just because a story has been told doesn't mean it's not important. Oh, thank you so much for the follow, Balduring. Just because the story has been told doesn't mean that you don't have something important to say, doesn't mean that you don't have an important twist on it, doesn't mean that it doesn't need to be told again. Every story has been told. How many times have, we don't talk about the number of times I've watched Zoolander. And that's not even a good
Yep.
story.
Yeah.
That's just
Yeah.
a story that makes me laugh, right? That's not even a good story. Every couple years I go back and I reread the Valdemar series by Mercedes Lackey and Larry Dixon because I hate myself, but it
Listen.
makes me feel things, right? And if you can reread the same story, like, again, I'm dating myself. If any of y'all have seen The Last Unicorn, excellent, weird 80s movie. Weird
Mm.
80s movie. Watched it all the time as a kid. And I'm going to be careful not to spoil if anyone wants to go out and watch this. It's weird, but it's really good and it's really pretty. But the unicorn meets Molly Groot, and Molly Groot is like this woman who hangs out with the thieves, right? She's cooking for him. She is not a good or pure person. She sees the unicorn and she has a reaction to it that as a kid, I'm like, that's weird. And then I watched it at 30 and went, and I shriveled and I died inside because I went, oh no, I understand now.
Mhm,
If
mhm.
if living, reading, watching the same story more than once can impact you, if it's the exact same story, retelling it in your words with your emotions and your experience and your life, your understanding of the world is going to be just as impactful for someone else.
Absolutely. And then, like going to it, like the thing that changed there, right, is context. Your personal context. The story doesn't even need to necessarily change. But I all art that one makes is going to have some part of themselves in it, regardless of what kind of art it is, what kind of medium you're doing. Even if you are purposefully being like, I'm gonna not a single thing that I think I'm gonna put in here. The fact that you intentionally did that does that. already. There is going to every story that you are going to tell is in some way, shape, or form reflective of the way you view yourself or the world around you. The way that the things that you choose to put in there, the way that you choose to show those things, the way you choose to frame them says something about the way that you view yourself and the world. And so even if you tell the same story that someone has already told you, the things you choose to focus on, the words you choose to express those things is going to fundamentally change that story and make it something about you. And that is something that has value regardless of if it's a thing that you believe has already been done before.
And to further hammer home the point, if you have a story idea, Shakespeare did it. If Shakespeare didn't do it, The Simpsons did it. If The Simpsons didn't do it, South Park did it. If South Park didn't do it, then Star Trek did it. Like, it's all done now.
Everything's been done. Everything's been done. But you can mix the ways that other things have been done, and that just makes a new thing that has now already been done.
We were running through Godplane at one point, and someone said, like, I dropped like a fact, right? And someone went, "Oh yes, I've played The Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening," and I'm like, "Yes, someone knows the reference." It's joy when you're like, "This thing impacted me. This thing changed and shaped who I was, and I took it and put my own spin on it and put it here." And someone recognizes that, and you're like, "We're the same, you and me. We."
And the reason that these stories have been done before, have been told over and over, is because ultimately the human condition has not changed over the past like 4,000, 5,000, 8,000 years. Like, we all have, while there are all sorts of new things that we have, like cell phones and computers and whatnot, we're all essentially sitting around the fire telling each other about our human experience. Like 8,000 years ago, people struggled with identity and struggled with their place in the community, and we've built in, like, not every, but most cultures have built all sorts of social structures and uh, and rites of passage to say, you are an adult in the community now, you are an elder in the community now, you are this grand poobah in the community now, specifically to address these very human insecurities that we have. You know, the concepts of like, love and fitting in and identity and longing and all the other stranger in a strange land. Um, what does it mean to be? Questions that have been asked for as long as we've had language. So yeah, you're going to tell a story that touches on these things, and that's why stories are good. No one wants to sit, like opening up your fridge and reading off the labels on the back of like the dressings and sauces you have is not a story. It's words, but it's not a story. It's not something that's going to grab most people. There are a couple people that'll get into it, but again, the internet is a weird place. But it's not something that's going to pull people in and really speak to them, because what makes stories great, what makes stories speak, is we all go, "Hey, I remember, I feel, this connects to me in this very real way." So don't ever be afraid to talk about your experience, to put something that moves you into a story, because someone else is going to connect to that, and then you guys now have a story, and it's a thing now.
Yeah.
Especially if your perspective is not from the mainstream identity.
Especially. Yes. 100%. And that's like part of that's like I think a good portion of how we kind of conceptualize the stories that we want to, I guess, talking about Tales Yet Told again. The ways that we conceptualize like the kinds of things that we want to tell, and the kinds of stories we want to tell. Most uh prayers in the static aside, no, I think still, most of the stories that we've told have been from the perspective of rebellion, of being a person in a society or culture that has expectations or rules or guidelines on how things should be structured, the way that things work, that our characters have gone, this doesn't actually feel, no, this doesn't feel right to me. And the ways that they learn to navigate that or rebel against it, or and sometimes temporarily conform depending on, the ways in which people need to survive or find comfort in conforming, which is another thing that Strangers in the Wood talks about. And like, there is some like being able to tell stories about people in a world in which they do not have a feel like they have a place in, and carving out a place for them to live in, and carving out a way for them to live in that world on their own terms, rather than the terms that society has, determined. Whispers in the Sea is about a group of pirates, and it's not like it's not like a very, typical like, oh hey, we're pirates, we're criminals, yada yada yada. I mean, they are criminals, but it is also the very intentional examining of why do people become pirates. Oh, imperialism. Imperialism and colonialism is the reason why pirates primarily exist.
And gay.
And gay, exactly. And that's like all of Whispers in the Sea
The
is.
heterosexual pirate myth is a fucking lie.
It's, yeah, no, it sucks. Pirates are one of the first unions. They are just a group. They were groups of people. A lot of them were just groups of people who were working on military ships, or state-owned ships, who were treated like trash, and said, hey, what if actually we didn't do that, and took over the ships that they were stationed on, took military ships, became pirates, stole primarily from state-owned, rich-owned, and military-owned vessels, and of course were demonized for it. And is that to say every pirate is a good person, and that the piracy also had a lot of bad things? But looking at the core of it, it is a state of rebellion, and typically were crew owned. Everybody had a say on what was going on. If you were leading it, it was because people said you could. Things were split evenly, usually. Like, and again, not to say that every pirate and every pirate captain was like, oh, good Robin Hood kind of person. No, a lot of them were selfish, evil people that did kill, murder, enslave, yada yada yada. But looking at it from that perspective of being like, okay, well, then why do people get into it, was very much why we did Whispers in the Sea, and how we went into it, of what is a group of outcasts in society that have been told all their lives that they have to live a certain way, do a certain thing, and be able to, live their lives the way that they want. What happens when they have a ship and they can just do whatever they want? And their answers to that is primarily steal artifacts back from rich people.
And drag performances.
And drag performances as well. Yes, equity on pirate ships, very key. It's in the laws. There are 8 laws of the sea and Whispers in the Sea, and that's one of them for sure.
I just having known criminals from all walks of life, and I am not advocating crime, but if you're going to do a crime, make it white collar crime. Like the prosecution rate is much lower, and the returns are listen, Steve, my FBI agent, I am not advocating crime. Don't come for me. Fine. But
if you want to get into a little tax fraud, it's okay.
Right.
Tax fraud is that's
the IRS
that's
plays
what
no
they get you
games.
for. Yeah,
that's true.
Like,
that's true.
Like, that's the thing. Everyone's like, "Oh, they finally got Al Capone on tax fraud." It's like, that's bad, because I have to do my own tax. Like, the government knows how much I owe, and they just won't tell me. They're like, "No, do math."
They're just waiting for you.
I'm bad at math. What happens if I'm bad at math? Jail. Okay, so now I'm even worse at math because I'm terrified while trying to do math. Thanks. Like,
and what's funny is, like, the green stuff is legal in a bunch of states. but it's not federally legal. And so a lot of banks are like, we're not going to touch this because it's not federally legal. This is a federal crime. The IRS, on the other hand, is like,
Like, pay up, pay
do
up.
your math,
Gimme, gimme.
put money in a zipper bag, and slide it across the table to us, and we will go our separate ways.
Mhm.
However, even though it's an all cash business, even though there's no we know how much you owe us. And it's like, how could you possibly? And it's like, we are the IRS. The
We
IRS
know.
is a sleeping dragon,
Mhm.
slow to waken, but once awake and breathing fire, burns down your entire village. Play
Mhm.
games with everybody else. Buy
Not the
somebody in the
IRS.
SEC.
They are
Don't play around with them.
they are the chonky dragon in the Dungeons and Dragons movie. Like,
Yeah.
they chonky and
Yeah.
they slow, but they will not stop.
But they will.
chasing you.
But they will chase you till you're dead.
But
We got really off topic there. Sorry.
right. But I over the course of my life, I've met a bunch of criminals, like people who jaywalk. Like we'll leave it at that. And it's always fascinating to me the reasons that they get into it, because it's always a matter of necessity. Like there is only like an A4 selection of printer paper style person that gets into crime for the shits and giggles. Everyone else is like, I had nowhere to turn. I had to do this. But the reasons for that explicit need, in fiction, in real life, cover so many different um, backgrounds and motivations. And like you said, sometimes just like, no one is going to accept me as I am, and as I want to be. And so I have to find a way to still like make a living and like sustain myself while also being my true authentic self. And for a lot of people, it's like, well, I shot myself in the foot. Like I tried to do this thing and it didn't work out, and now I have a face tattoo and no one is hiring. Um, but it's always really fascinating. And again, like stories about like especially like cooperative crimes, like 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 thieves guilds or pirate ships, is this amalgamation of all people who are trying to find their place in the world, and then they find their place, and it just so happens that like the British Navy has a problem with it.
Yeah.
Let me
Literally.
let me tell y'all, there's a game that I can't talk much about yet because it's being worked on, right? It's not announced yet, but I'm surprised. Anyone who knows me, you're going to be shocked I'm playing a rogue.
Right.
Okay, now that we've got that out of our system, playing a rogue, there is no joy like the rogue telling the party cleric who worships Desna, just gave away what system it is, but who worships Desna, the goddess of luck, like luck and dreams, is like, no, all thieves worship Desna. Who else are we going to worship? What is a thief but someone who, like, we're not in it for fun. We're in it because we're not happy with our lot in life. Like, you consider her all this. To us, it's just a chance to make our lives better.
I love that. I love that. And it's, yeah, I think it's very much the relationship between an individual and the law, and how individuals or groups under the law are asymmetrically held accountable by the law, is very much like everything that we wanted to do in Whispers in the Sea, and like the weird political state of being, there is, it's similar to One Piece, there is a world navy, it does not have every country in the world. It's the UN but a
Yeah.
navy,
Yeah.
where only some countries are in the
The
navy,
UN
not all
Security
of them.
Council. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. But the Union Navy controls all of the like middle territory in between the two large countries that are in the Union Navy, which just also happens to be where all of the trade routes where most trade routes for every other country have to go through. And
Mhm.
so if you're not a part of the group that's a part of the Union Navy, it gets a little harder for you, which is kind of the pressure to join the Union Navy if you don't already. But it's like there's like a mandatory conscription process of like a number of your troops have to go to the, and it's a whole thing, and it's this super purposefully messy political situation that the world has been put in, that the Union Navy, which is now becoming a political entity of itself, separate from the countries that are a part of it, have are pushing on people and are
Mhm.
like, hey, you have to do all this. Oh, you're a poor fisherman from Belle that's trying to get into here. Well, there's going to be some extra tariffs on this thing you're trying to bring in. No, dang, you're not a part of it. Well, I'm sorry. If only your country were a part of the Union Navy, you wouldn't have these kinds of things. And it's like
Yep.
that kind of like imperialistic drive for control over other people's resources and
Yeah.
colonialist
And it's
drive to do that is like that's what pushes people into piracy, because that's you only go through that so much before you're like,
mhm.
I can't afford to live my life doing the thing that I was doing before because of this drain on resources this is now.
And that's still less aggressive than the East India Trading Company.
It
You haven't
is
looked
it
that
like
stuff up?
Yo.
it's so
Ooh,
bad. It's
Yo.
so
so
bad.
bad.
It's so
So
bad.
bad.
And it's like that is the realities that so many people had to live through and then get persecuted and criminalized for when they go, hey, this sucks actually. Also, I didn't ask for this. You just showed up and started doing it.
Yeah.
And
And
the
taking all of our spices and not even using them.
Right?
so true. So true.
Not a
So
one.
true. Not a single one. Not even
David,
salt.
we got to be careful. David will go off about this
Yeah.
No, go off
for
about it,
hours.
David.
I
Go off
know.
about it, David.
I know. I've been
Because
on the receiving end.
because they found nutmeg and were like, other people are growing nutmeg. Went and burned down all the other nutmeg trees, so only they had nutmeg. Came back, put nutmeg in like two things, and called it a day. Like, you made this thing so expensive and then didn't even bring like like Kay used to work for Red Bull, and I don't want to say a bunch of good things about Red Bull, but what Red Bull does is Red Bull go and any other like drink manufacturer, whether soft or hard, um, will have on their website, here's how you utilize our products. If you take Red Bull and you pour it into vodka,
Mm.
then
Red Bull.
you
Red Bull specifically tells you not to do that.
true, true. However, if you find a college campus, walk 5 minutes in a direction and you will find a bar. And inside that bar, there is a bartender pouring a Red Bull and a vodka into a glass so that you could drink it. Now, Red Bull specifically tells you not to do that, but I can attest, Red Bull has many other cocktails that, quite frankly, are delicious. But that is not the point. But they went all the way to get this motherfucking nutmeg. They burned villages, they burned forests, a bunch of people died. And then they came back and they're like, hey, buy this spice, it's really expensive. And they're like, I bet I'll pay with just all this blood money for this. So what do we do with it? And they're like, nah, bruv, I'm eating a meat pie with green pea liquor. Like I don't know what to figure it out on your
We'll
own. And it's just
figure it
like,
out.
come on now. Come on.
Why did we go through all this? What was the point? Control was the
Yeah.
point.
And for anyone who is a student of history, go and find the actual people who did the things and then learn about what they did, because your average person's understanding of how awful colonialism is pales in comparison to what actually went down. Because in Africa, there is the biggest hole ever dug by hand. And that's why diamonds are expensive. Oh, and by the way, he was like, well, I named a couple of countries after myself. It's fine. And you're like, excuse me? One wasn't an. It's a whole. I can sit here for the next like 2 hours and be like, so this is what European colonialism did bad, and not even scratch the surface. It's awful. It's bad. So whenever somebody raises the Jolly Roger and stirs some shit up for the against the colonialist empire, because that colonialist empire lives by the edict of laws. Some laws are, or no, laws are meant to bind certain people but not protect them. And those same laws are meant to protect certain people but not bind them. And if you happen to be on the colonialist ship, you are not bound, you are protected. But if you're on any other ship, then you are bound and not protected. And that sums up like colonialist politics for the past like 600 years.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
And you kept it relatively short. I'm very impressed.
Right. I mean, we weren't talking Centaur accessibility, so we didn't get too
No,
deep.
we didn't lose the entire episode to that.
Right.
But yeah, no, you're what? Yeah, no, that's all of what that's Whispers in the Sea in a nutshell, basically.
So, season 1 is out.
Yes.
It's won awards.
Yes.
Hey, Ilaria, welcome in. We could find it. David has been wonderfully diligent about dropping in links. You can go and catch up now because season 2 is not yet out.
That is correct. We are, so as I said, we're working on the second season of Strangers in the Wood right now. Or we're in like pre-production for it. But we're doing a smaller mini season that takes place in the same setting as season 1, that takes place in the Sublime, called Voices in the Wood. We used Void 1680 AM. It is a solo game. It is a playlist building solo game where you act as a radio show host on an AM on a small AM radio station, and you put together a playlist based on prompts, and you also have callers come in based on cards you draw and prompts in it. Well, we took that, and I said, well, rather than me just making up callers, right, for this, I'm just gonna have guests. I'm gonna have guests come in and call and be people who live in this world, and that way we can do additional world building, and like people can add on to this world, and we can also like explore what it like. We've had the perspective of Dorothy, Dakota, and Walter. Dorothy and Dakota, who are new to this world. So it's like a lot of oh wow, we're just now figuring out about a lot of this stuff. And they interact with some people, but now we get to see a wider range of people who are just living their life in the sublime. And a lot of them have very different reactions to what that's like, because there are a lot of people who live in the sublime who have been brought into the sublime, usually when they are children. It's usually somewhere between being like 6 to like 15, and then are brainwashed through the education system and live their lives here now, right? And they have varying degrees of like memories of like whatever their old lives were like, whatever the real world was like. And so in the fiction, 2048 AM, Voices in the Wood, is a small AM radio station that is a high school project by the host, Lil Harry, who was a child star in his youth, but now haven't been given his role in society now, which is as entertainer or host. For his senior project has like, okay, me and my friends, let's start a radio show, and like I'll be the host, and they are using music that they have found a way to bring into the sublime from outside of it. Um, and are playing it on this small radio station for people who used to live on Earth during our, in our lifetime, um, and are like, hey, here's a little piece of home. Here's a little like call in, ask for it. We'll see if we can find it. Music from the world that you used to live in, whether you remember it or not. Or if you were someone who was born, because like there becomes a certain point where there are people who are born here that have never been to Earth and only know it because people that they know claim that they've come from it, and sometimes their parents or loved ones have come from that world. And so Lil Harry and like the Wolf Pack, the name of the group of kids who run this radio show, have never been to Earth or whatever, but they had a friend who used to live on Earth, and so like listening to music that they were able to find a way to pull in from that world was like a way for them to connect with that person. And so now they're going to use this as a way for other people to be able to connect with each other as well. And it has very, very strange consequences and very, very strange reactions as people who decide, like as people go, oh, this is a great idea, man, this is really taking me back, to people who go, this is a terrible idea, because you making people think about the outside world is corrupting them, and now people are falling to the curse. And there's like a wide array of like blaming and like celebration and thankfulness and like grief that goes on in this show. That sometimes it's hard to remember that this is like a 17-year-old kid hosting this radio show, having full-on adults call him and like trauma dump or blame about terrible things that are happening in their life because of the existence of this show. And yeah, sorry, go for it.
No, I was gonna say that's really interesting. So hey Kato, this is a game. This is a radio show built inside of the world of Sublime, which is an alternate kind of 80s-esque, very rigid world in the podcast Tales Yet Told.
Yes.
So my mother was a military child and an Air Force child and moved all over the country, and was of an era when it's not like the America we know now. Everything was very fragmented. Hey, souls. Thank you for the lurk. And so she said, like, she would move to a new school and fashion was different. Food was different. Everything was different. But she was like, the only thing that was consistent was the radio. And so like music became incredibly important to my mother, and knowing what's popular, because that was the first connection she could make with other kids. And she was just constantly moving.
Yeah,
so,
like music is this incredibly like powerful way for people to connect with each other, because it finds ways to, explore and express so much about ourselves that millions upon millions of people can resonate with all at the same time. Like it's this super powerful thing. And so like it treated as such in the world, as far as like, hey, this is a thing that has the power to not just connect us, but make us think about the world that we're in based on purely like the content of it. We, for the project, like, so this was a huge production nightmare. We had 16 guests that we had to schedule 5 episodes around. But
so
it's
many.
and so like each episode has 4 guests, because basically I played the game by myself. I wrote down all of the prompts for music I needed to choose. The kind Each guest came in with a character, or like a set of characters that were like, okay, I like this character, let's do this one. And then based off of their age and temperament, I put them to like different face cards based on like how the game is run. Um, and so like as I sat down and played with myself, playing this game, obviously not, the different the different cards,
Yep.
yeah, I'd pull a card out. I'm like, okay, so this is this person that's going to be in this episode. This is they come in this order based on the order that I pulled the cards out. And then I went back. That was like playing the game was like my pre-production, and then the production was, okay, you all are going to be in this episode. Here are some prompts that you can use if you want to help uh, uh, inform your character. And also, here's a library of music to choose from, because me and the wonderful help from my co-producer, Will, from Live at the Apocalypse, helped me reach out to music artists, specifically like indie music artists, small artists, to be like, hey, here's this project we're working on, and I also want to be able to use it to platform your music, to be able to be like, hey, if you have music you want to go in here, this is this. And like everybody was super excited about it. And so we have a huge library of music that these artists sent to us, that the cast and myself chose from, so that we could play the music without worries of like, big
DCMA takedowns
licensing and stuff, right?
licensing fees
Yeah.
and all that.
Yeah,
DC.
but it was also a way for me to get like people in the TTRPG space who make music, right, and give them a place to have it on.
Yeah, DC earlier in the conversation had said, wow, music rights and clearances and paying artists must have eaten up your budget.
If we had a budget, it 100% would have. If I genuinely, if I had the money, this is the big thing. We were talking about it earlier. If I had the money, Tales Yet Told would be doing so much more stuff, because I just want to be able to pay people to make good art. My hope is that in the future, because spoilers, we want to do another season of this small mini season, because that's just how much like truly amazing, like what people added to the world, what they were able to explore with the characters, and like short, like 5 to 10 minute conversations. Like we were just so excited about it. But in the future, if we could get sponsors, my goal is to be able to pay every single guest, every single music artist, because like people's labor is has value, even if it is for fun. So yeah. But as it is, Tales Yet Told, I pay for it out of my own pocket, and I'm not a rich person.
The just the concept of bringing in all of these different actors to portray these characters on the radio show leads me to a question that's been burning me. Tell me about your cast, because especially podcasts, you're only as good as the people you've got.
Yes. So for the main cast of Tales Yet Told, as it stands right now, because there might be some changes in the future, the main cast are 3 of my closest friends, whom I've known for years. 2 of them I went to college with, Gus, Hilda, and Marcy. They don't do anything else in the tabletop space. The only tabletop thing that they play games obviously on their own, but as far as like actual plays and that kind of stuff, they don't. This Tales Yet Told is really the only thing that they did, and us playing Strangers in the Wood was actually their first time playing together whatsoever. They had all been people that I had played with before, and I was like, okay, these are all people I really enjoy playing with. Let's see what happens. And like, by its definition, lightning in a bottle. Like that first session, like the chemistry, they were like people playing off of each other, the humor, the humanity that each person brought to it was just, I it would be hard for me to say I would replace that table with anything. They are some of my favorite people to play with. They that first season, Hilda, who plays Dorothy Reed, got nominated for best performer and an actual play podcast. For playing Dorothy at the New Jersey Web Fest. She lost to Brennan Lee Mulligan. What are you gonna do? Like,
Right.
what are you gonna do?
When Lord Vader is up for an award,
Right.
then
Like-
that's that.
Yeah, like what are you gonna do? But it's like that, like it's like they did win best ensemble cast for that,
Amazing.
because like for a game that was their first time playing together as like those three people playing together, and like it is absolutely wonderful. But, like literally the only thing that I would change is I wish we had more people of color, and that's on me. That's genuinely on me. This was my first time getting into the actual play space, or like the main TTRPG space as a whole, like again 3 years ago, and so I didn't know what was going on at the time. I didn't realize that there was already a bunch of white people. um, and so I pulled three of my closest friends, because I went to a predominantly white institution for ever since middle school. I went to an all-boys Catholic middle school. There were not a lot of
My
people.
condolences.
Hey, I turned out good. I'm good. I wasn't Catholic going in. I wasn't Catholic coming out. All I did was learn about religion.
You turned out great, despite, not
Despite.
because.
Yes.
You know what?
As
That's
as
fair.
someone who has
That's
spent a lot
fair.
of time in Catholic school,
I got so lucky. The Catholic school that I went to gave me a campus ministry award when I graduated, despite the fact I'm not Catholic.
yikes, yikes.
Well, I did do a lot of the stuff there because I love promoting people learning about the religion and their faith and so on and so forth. But they gave it to me, who wasn't Catholic, and came out as being bi during a retreat that I was leading. They were chill, I guess. I don't know.
Look,
That
that
is-
happens with surprising regularity.
For real.
The coming out at a retreat, not the being chill.
Yeah.
Let me just clarify.
Yes, the
Yeah,
coming out.
yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I went to a non-denominational Christian school from kindergarten until I graduated college.
Yikes.
And they loudly preached that Catholics were going to hell for
Mm.
worshiping idols. So,
That makes
you know,
sense.
not everyone is nearly as chill.
It's
Yeah.
not idolatry. It's veneration through the saints.
Yeah. No,
It's not the same
Catholics were going
thing.
to hell, but the Jews were chill.
Look, when
Everybody's-
Martin Luther hammered them
There's
shits on
not-
that door, he did not know he did not predict the sort of tomfoolery and shenanigans would happen across the pond hundreds of years later. And I
There's
kind
no
of,
way you could have known.
I kind of want to just like go back in time, kidnap him, and then like
You gotta
show
find a
him
different way. You gotta find a different way to do this stuff.
a preacher in the woods with a bucket of snakes and be like, you did this. Whatever crimes the Catholics are committing, you did this. This is on you, my friend.
That's so funny. I've actually done Christianity is my special interest as an autistic person. It sucks that it is, but hey, it is what it is. Done a lot of research on snake handling within the Christian church, specifically in the Appalachian region. It's wild how often it happened.
Mhm.
And also how few incidents of people dying we have recorded.
Yep.
Recorded, to be clear.
Yeah, recorded is the key word there.
Recorded.
And
is
Kato
the
says
key
you
word
had a
there.
multi-year long theology degree primer.
Basically, yeah.
Oh,
I-
yeah, Rex can also tell some stories.
Yep. It's almost like Christian faiths in this country have left an indelible mark on its citizens.
Who would have guessed? Who would have
Yeah.
guessed?
In God we
Yeah.
trust.
Martin Luther, what were you doing?
And it's like like my guy, I get it, but also the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
How could he have known? He was fighting a greater evil in his mind.
Right, right.
Mhm.
And I'd argue fighting a greater evil, but also, and this circles back to like storytelling earlier
Mhm.
because there are all sorts of stories out there, especially like in fantasy, where one of two things happen. Where one, someone did something a long time ago that was the right thing at the time that had unforeseen consequences moving forward, and now in present day, you got to deal with that. Or there was a big, ugly monster that they put to bed because they couldn't like kill it. And then
Mhm.
every so often, it's like, well, I'm awake now, feeling great, stretched, the elbows popped. I've had my cup of coffee. It's go time. And then you got to like do something about it. And that is a recurring theme throughout human history, which is why it's a recurring theme throughout the stories we tell.
I think that latter thing you talked about, would be a great allegory for dealing with generational trauma.
Yeah,
There
absolutely.
was this huge monster that my parents, their parents before them had to fight, and we just kind of put it back to bed, and now it's my time to do it. And then my kids will probably have to do it if we don't, I don't know, finally find something to do with this monster other than let it come out every couple of years.
Yeah.
And
There
it's
is-
funny.
There's a great indie game called Swords of Ditto, and it's a like roguelike couch co-op, drop in, drop out. But it's literally, if you find the Sword of Ditto, you're the hero, but that also means you're gonna die. And the developers just like leaned into it because you talked to them like, wow, you're the hero, that's so cool. Sucks, you're gonna die. Glad it's not me. I'm really glad it's not me.
Oh, I gotta play this game.
It's
This sounds
really
like everything I'm about.
It's really good.
Oh, that's really good.
And there's this discourse that happens throughout history. Again, part of the human condition is that whatever the older group is complains about the younger generations. And then there's this rebellious swell from the younger generations. And we're experiencing it now because there are people going out on social media going, you know who's the worst? Gen X. And everybody's like, excuse me? Where have you been? I know you were just spawned, but you are not correct.
I mean, this has been going
Boomers
on.
still exist.
Right. This has been going on for quite a while where all the younger generation was like, Gen X. And Gen X is like, excuse me, the boomers are right there.
Right.
They're
Like,
still
we,
here.
we don't want to be
Look.
perceived anyway, so just go fuck with the boomers. It's their fault.
They're still here.
And like millennials discovered the phrase generational trauma. And there's this idea there's this budding arrogance among millennials that we've fixed all the things that our parents and grandparents have done like on a personal level. But then you look at Gen Z and Gen Alpha, like looking at the millennials, are like, all right, these are all the things you're doing wrong. And the millennials are like, no, we got it figured out. It's fine. We're perfect. Like we finally ended generational trauma. We discovered it and ended it all in the same and Gen Z and Gen Alpha are like,
No.
Yeah. And it's like, yes, I witnessed the rise and fall of the compact disc, but there's still stuff out there.
Right.
There's still more stuff.
Right? It didn't end with the CD, okay?
Oh man.
The
maybe
chat
this-
is
branded
absolutely
as
first of all, don't look at me.
doomers.
The most Gen X response as a Gen Xer, let me point you down the line. Second of all, the boomers will not let go of power.
They won't. That's the problem.
As a Gen X, first of all, how dare you notice me? Like, it's great. Like, chat, I love y'all. I love y'all so much. Yeah, pre-Gen Alpha gets rebranded as Doomers.
Ooh, it's coming. It's coming.
It's gonna happen. It's gonna
I will not
happen.
make a CD joke. I will not make a CD. Look,
Ah,
the fact,
compact
like, that was one of
disc.
my favorite phrases I ever heard was like, we can tell our grandchildren, not that I'm having grandchildren, we can tell our grandchildren that we witnessed the rise and fall of the compact disc.
And they'll go, "What's a compact disc?"
Yeah, it's going to mean absolutely nothing, but it sounds so epic.
That's so true. I
But
remember
alright.
using floppy disks still
Yep.
for
Right?
class.
So, do you know that Zoomers do not know what a floppy disk is? And so they're like, why is there a 3D printed save icon?
Yep.
I mean, wait, a 3D printed save icon? Why would it be?
Yep.
Because they've only seen it as a save. Like they've never saved to a floppy disk. They've never seen
I mean,
one.
yeah, I guess that I'm super interested in what the save button is going to look like down the line, or if the floppy disk will always be the
Right?
icon chosen for saving something.
You were very heavy.
Like, how far is it going to make? How far is the iconography of a floppy disk going to last within the cultural zeitgeist for saving?
I never got to play out this character, but this is the character that was the backbone of Godplane. One of the concepts that became the thing that became Godplane. But it was a character who was like it's slow ice death of the planet, right? Civilization is completely broken down. Everyone's nomadic, and this is like the leader of this nomadic tribe who were trekking through the ice, trying to find the grazing grounds where the herds are, so that they can. And around his neck is a key. And no one knows what a lock is. They consider keys like a magic wand that can open things. They just know the symbology. They don't understand the technical of it. I love doing stuff like that.
That's so good.
So much fun. When I moved, I finally threw away a zip disk.
Yep. Yep. It is probably still in a trash bag at my old place, but yeah, I threw away a zip disk in the year of our Lord 2024.
Wow.
DC had his for 10 years.
That was an artifact.
Yeah.
True.
Oh, man.
A true artifact of the past. But we are nearing the end of our time here, and Gilmore is getting very impatient that he is in arms, not on lap. So, floppy disks make excellent coasters. That hurts my heart somehow. Like
the era when AOL was sending out CDs in bulk.
Yeah.
Where they would just frisbees, coasters, like I'm not
put them
sure
in the microwave.
Right? I'm not sure any piece of computer technology has been repurposed more aggressively than the AOL online, the America Online compact disc.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of sad I don't have any more, because I kind of want one.
Right.
I'm sure you can find it for like hundreds of dollars on eBay,
hundreds of dollars. Christmas tree ornaments. Best paintball practice targets. Yeah. Like, I got very sad when someone was like, they heard, like, a younger generation heard a modem sound for the first time. And we're like, what is that? And I'm like, that's the sound of friends coming. You don't understand how happy that sounded.
That's the sound of the ICQ booting up.
Yeah. But before we get too lost in 90s nostalgia and 2000s nostalgia, we've been on a journey. We have told some stories about tales yet told. I know we greatly confused Kato about what radio station this was, which I consider a win. Anytime you can cause chaos for Kato, great. Kendo, thank you so much for joining us. Remind us, who are you? Why are you here? And where can we find and how can we support you?
Yeah. Thank you again. Thank you all for having me. My name is Kendrick Okendo, whichever you prefer. You can find me everywhere on the internet that matters at Kendo Makes Films. And you can find my actual play podcast, Tales Get Told, anywhere on the internet that matters at Tales Get Told, or anywhere you can get your podcasts. Right now is a great time to catch up because Voices in the Wood is currently in post-production. And if you want more information on it, you're gonna have to go follow us for that information. Our editor is currently on tour right now.
Oh, dope!
So Yeah,
Look, it's hard getting touring gigs, so congrats.
Yeah.
Exactly,
Yeah.
literally, exactly. And so you will more than likely be hearing more about it early June, and it will probably come out late June or July. We'll see. You'll have to follow us to find out for sure.
And as you're either listening to the new stuff or catching up, don't forget to rate and or comment, because that helps your podcast
Yes.
so much. Trust me. It
Yes.
takes you 2 seconds. Do it. Hit that 5 stars on Good Pods or 5 stars on Spot. Whatever you're listening, hit those buttons, because it helps. It really
does. And like, aside from like the algorithm thing helping and like other stuff, it's super helpful just for us to know what is resonating with people, and that it's resonating as well. The number of because of how long it takes to make podcasts, we have been doing this through some of the worst portions of our lives, and nothing has been more helpful, satisfying, inspiring than seeing like a random rating or like a comment come through of someone talking about what they like about it, and it helps. We don't get paid. We don't make money. I spend so much money trying to make it happen. God, yes, I hope we make money at some point. But it's super helpful for any artist to let them know how it made you feel, because it helps validate it. Even if that person doesn't actively need validation, it still helps, you know.
Every creator I know lives in their head and is incredibly nervous that, am I just wasting my time? Does anyone like what I'm doing? Does this even matter? Oh gods, does it even matter? So no, it is good.
Yeah.
And again, put on Twitter, hey, so-and-so. Don't start with the @. Do something, put a dot and then the the thing, because then other people will see it. But hey, I really like this episode. This really resonated with me. That helps so much. So much. It is free to tweet about or to like or comment on your favorite artist thing. I wasn't here for a call out. Look, I'm calling myself out. And if that speaks to you as well, sorry. Sorry. Oh my goodness. Stellar Encore. Pan, how are you doing? Welcome on in. We are just wrapping up. So yes, Kendall, thank you so much. We cannot thank you enough for coming here, sharing. Again, we have we have your people in chat. You definitely resonated. So thank you. David, who the heck is you and what the heck has we been doing here?
I am not suffering from crosstalk over the course of this episode, and that's been very good. I too survived Catholic. No. Hi, I'm David, and this is the Table Talk Show, where we talk about TTRPG stuff, and cool, awesome podcasts, and Over the Garden Wall, and Feeding Our Lanterns. All with how to be a better player, how to be a better GM, how to be a better person, all with a focus on intersectionality and inclusivity, so we all can have a good time.
And I am Kay. This has been Gilmore. He demands treats, so this is part of the reason we have to. Sometimes there are cats. Yes, we had a 3-legged cat as well as Gilmore, and that makes it a great day. I'm Kay. You can find me across the internet at KDamnFear, usually right here at Chaotic Wholesome Presents, Chaotic Wholesome on most of the interwebs. Find us here every Tuesday doing this. We are reaching out to more guests this week, so I am so excited to be able to tell you what we're up to. Next month, we have a series of charity games coming up, so we hope you will follow. We hope you will come back and check out some of the incredible stories that are going to be told. I cannot take credit for the amazing tables that are going to happen. One of our GMs was like, I got this, back off. And we have majority BIPOC, majority queer tables coming up for all of June, and I am just so hyped that I get to be part of one of them. Thursday, I'm over on Nerdsmith playing the Grand Labyrinth Heist. It is not Labyrinth. It is a steampunk Victorian era heist game, and it has been very fun thus far. And Baldur's Gate 3 right back here on Friday. Thank you all so much for hanging out. Hope you have a great weekend. Please go check out Tales Yet Told. And even if it's not Tales Yet Told, any podcast that you're listening to, make sure you go and hit the like and leave a comment because, again, every creator on this chat has been like, hey, you called me out. Yep. It really helps. It really matters. Thank you all so much. We will see you next time. Be kind to yourself and be excellent to others. Bye, y'all.